In the shadow of what's been unfolding in Minneapolis and major cities across our country the past few days, I thought long and hard yesterday about just throwing today's message of living with uncertainty in the trash and starting over. But after a morning of reflection, contemplation, and prayer, I realized a hastily prepared change might actually do us more harm than good. This is a time when human emotions and reactions are all over the map. Mine are no exception. This truly is a time of living with uncertainty and paying attention to the shadows of unknowing and our own shadow side. That doesn't mean that we get stuck in uncertainty, do nothing, but this is a time for being still and listening to that still small voice within, listening to the pain all around us, and hear what the holy has to say. Hear what the people who feel wronged have to say, not seduced by simplistic answers, dualistic thinking, or angry people. Please hear the words I share today with the love and empathy that they are intended for all people. Our reading by Elizabeth Tarbach, Shadows of Unknowing. Gray, the color of the lake before sunrise. Gray, the underside of the gull that flies overhead while the earth blindly searches for morning. Give me gray. Gray, the color of not sure, don't know yet. Gray, the color of compromised, maybe. Let me think about it. Gray, for talking things over, listening again, thinking some more. Gray for the shaded areas of the other point of view, for the possibility of real change. Gray for the smudged edges of what once was dogma and now is doubt. Gray. In the bright red and green and blue and gold of the season, and the noise and the festivity, give me gray. For the quiet of my soul, the moment of heaviness before sleep, the peace of meditation. The steel gray of the lake mirrors the gray clouds overhead, and the bird meanders through the grace of morning flight, waiting, watching the movement of a gray walker, watching him, and the earth bows to find the dawn and feels its first slanting beams. Can I take this as a promise, I wonder, that after the questions, the doubts, the hours of contemplation, there will be gold through the gray, promise fulfilled, and truth revealed? I don't know, but I believe in small epiphanies, a single beam of life in the darkness, some sought-for star, some one certainty emerging from the gray. Meanwhile, let us embrace the doubt and cherish our unknowing and patiently await the dawn. Let us now begin our time of silent meditation. Blessed be. Our meditation hymn is number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life. sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build the common good, and make our home days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we stand, for years we lost, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build a common good, and make our home days glad.
You've heard the old saying, there are only two things in life that are certain: death and taxes. We've heard a lot recently about death. Almost daily briefings on the COVID-19 pandemic have given us constant reminders of the number of people who have been killed by the virus, the number of new cases that have been added to the count. The statistics are a bit confusing at times as more testing is done. It's hard to keep a vigilant ear to what's going on. There's so much that's still unknown. Most of us prefer certainty over uncertainty, the known over the unknown. As we are still asked to maintain distance, shelter at home, no specific end in sight as to when or whenever we can return to life as it was. If there's really so little certainty in life, how are we supposed to plan for the future? Have some control over our lives? We tend to plan for the future based on the past, but there's so little change beyond our control. There's a human need to understand the past, but there's a strong fascination with the future. What if you knew the future? Would you try to change it? If you could change things yet to come, might we still make poor choices based on premature assumptions? A clear vision of your future destiny might be more of a burden rather than a gift. Living with uncertainty means living with change. Through the ages, wise sages have taught the wisdom of uncertainty. Most people do like to plan for the future in order to feel in control, but you know, there is so much change that's way beyond our control. Lately, we've been reminded of this uncertainty, so many changes and uncertainty, of course, brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Life is messy. Plans fall apart, things go wrong. So many of our plans have been canceled or changed. We all know uncertain times like waiting for test results, medical reports. Maybe you're still waiting to hear about that loan you applied for, job application callbacks. Anxiety goes way up. Maybe your job no longer exists. Your business has been shut down. Or a dreaded call in the middle of the night changes life as you know it. A loved one suddenly gone forever. In her book, Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change, American Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron, she says, human beings share a tendency to scramble for certainty whenever we realize everything around us is in flux. In difficult times, the stress of trying to find solid ground, something predictable and safe to stand on, seems to intensify. But in truth, the very nature of our existence is forever in flux. Everything keeps changing, whether we're able to tolerate uncertainty and whether we're even aware of it or not. The real cause of suffering is not being able to tolerate the uncertainty. Denying the fundamental ambiguity of being human is an issue. The spiritual practice of awakening to our fundamental ambiguity is a process of letting go. It is a process of relaxing in the middle of the paradoxical, ambiguous middle, full of potential, full of new ways of thinking and seeing, with no guarantee of what will happen next. Buddhist wisdom teaches people to embrace the world as it is, in all its uncertainty. Embrace life with nonviolence and compassion, learning to live in the face of uncertainty. Chodron's teaching is intended to help us relate to the impermanent, ever-shifting nature of our life experience, and to wake up and use our everyday life experiences to be more loving and conscious of others. To do this inner work of learning to let go, to do no harm. Now, Chodron coaches us to relax with paradox and ambiguity. Having to have resolution and uncertainty closes doors. Not knowing, being okay with ambiguity, opens us to possibilities. Benedictine nun, author, and speaker, Joan Chittister, calls this uncertainty and ambiguity the benevolence of the unknown. She says seeing the unknown as friendly and welcoming instead of hostile and dangerous helps us make peace with uncertainty. How then does our religious faith help us to live with uncertainty? Let's start with the idea of letting go of the need to control everything, everybody. By acknowledging that we're not in control of everything, it makes a new beginning possible. This doesn't mean just the people who issue the directives and like to arrange things and make all the decisions. It might be the quiet, sneaky, and manipulative folks, too, who seek to control life in passive-aggressive ways. We have to learn to admit that we don't know everything, but embrace humility. Admit that it's okay, not to have all the answers. A wise person said, the beginning of wisdom is learning what you don't know, understanding that we all have much to learn. Facing things for the first time, it creates stress. And this applies to anything in life that we have to face the first time. Children, youth, seniors, every age is a new challenge. And by the time you figure it out, you're not that age anymore. There aren't many do-overs in life, so it's a good idea to draw on the wisdom of others who've done whatever you are experiencing. We read books, we talk with family and friends who are experienced in whatever we are facing for the first time. Our Unitarian Universalist faith offers us a wide path where people of diverse beliefs can walk together in search of finding a middle way with a community of companions. Our liberal faith offers perspectives that are open to new insights and understanding. Doubts and questions We welcome them, and we know they're necessary. Our church community helps us deal with uncertainty in times of tragedy. It is a place of uncertainty, a place of understanding, a place of comfort and kindness, where we can learn once again about the fragility of life. Everything can change in an instant, but we are not alone. Our faith of the living tradition teaches us to live without certainty, live life's questions without prescribed answers. Our religious tradition believes change is good. How then do we help one another live well with uncertainty? First, expect change. Joys and disappointments, birth and death. The natural flow of life exists and things don't match. Uncertainty is a natural part of life. We can learn to roll with it, as one person said, learning to carry on the best of our ability. Franciscan priest, inspirational speaker, and teacher Richard Rohr calls this living in the flow of life, living in alignment with the divine flow, letting love flow to you and through you toward all the world around you that trusts uncertainty. Father Rohr says, great love, great suffering, and some form of contemplative practice are the usual paths that help him get his small, false self out of the way and become an open conduit for the gushing stream of abundant life. My spiritual practice of meditation, reading, and contemplative prayer help me live with uncertainty. Having a regular spiritual practice helps calm me in times of stress, personal change, or even rapid change. Expecting change and rolling with it, or being flexible to the best of our ability, is a good way to deal with uncertainty. Sometimes when I feel particularly stressed, off-center, or spiritually torn in multiple directions, I call on a trusted and wise colleague to listen me into speech, as the Quakers say. And I did just that yesterday, as I struggle with what I wanted to say about George Floyd's senseless death by a Minneapolis police officer and the subsequent rioting and destruction of property that obscures the real issues of racism, poverty, and oppression that is experienced by so many people of color. Instead of hastily addressing the unfolding crisis, as some are calling UU ministers to do, I realize, as uncomfortable as it is to be present to my sense of anger, grief, sadness, and urge to do something, I know I need to be okay for a short time in my own unknowing. To listen, learn as much as possible about being in solidarity, in relationship, so I can know what kind of help or advocacy is desired. I need to pay attention to my own righteous anger and grief. Hastily speaking out in a reactionary way only adds more negativity and a misplaced attempt to bring some kind of control to an already devastating situation. I've read that developing a spiritual practice of humility teaches us that we are not in control of everything, not in control of all future outcomes, no matter how much we'd like to think we are. We are all part of something larger than ourselves. We can only control our own actions. True humility teaches us to admit that we don't have all the answers. Contemplation helps us still our roiling emotions long enough to listen and perhaps see the way forward more clearly. But life is uncertain. We can't change that, but we can change our response to what happens in life, what happens to us. When everything possible has changed, you have your soul and what Viktor Frankl called the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. We can choose to learn and grow from our most difficult trials. Our personal spiritual freedom cannot be taken away. It can make life meaningful and purposeful. And our Unitarian, Universalist faith gives us a spiritual center, not a controlling behavior or rigid judgmental dogma. Let ours be a healthy faith expressed through loving kindness, not reactionary anger and short-sightedness. I read that living with uncertainty produces a certain amount of anxiety. Two types, one realistic and one not so. Learning to live well with uncertainty is an opportunity to grow into a deeper human being. To meet anxiety and uncertainty with an open heart requires a mature faith. Faith is not an attempt to control life through a rigid belief system used by some people to hide behind or to judge others. By faith, I mean an inner knowing that no matter what happens in life, we are loved and can grow into a fuller human being with our faith in humankind intact. Faith is that inner knowing that no matter what happens, we can always reach out to help another person. We can learn to be in solidarity with the poor and oppressed, learn to be taught by them, and love others. This requires a faith in humanity, love, humility, inclusivity, and belief in possibility, to clearly see the image of the divine in each person. Living with uncertainty, we can see ourselves not as controlling egos, but as gentle guides for our children and grandchildren, our friends and fellow citizens. We can give others the space to be the essence of who they truly are and encourage them in the relationships by being a living example of humility and loving kindness ourselves. Perhaps blessing more, control less could become a personal motto. As Elizabeth Tarbach says from our reading this morning, let us embrace the gray, embrace the doubt, and cherish our unknowing while we patiently await the dawn. Find out what gives you joy, what lights you up, fills your life with goodness and gratitude, and make space for listening. Our Universalist faith calls us to act out of solidarity with the marginalized and all of creation. Buddhist monk and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us that every day should begin with gratitude and a reminder that life is temporary. In one reflection, he writes, every 24-hour day is a tremendous gift to us. So we all should learn to live in a way that makes joy and happiness possible. I want to close with a story about a monk and a crystal glass. I've got my own glass here to remind us. The people of the town, they came to the wise old monk and they asked him, how could he be happy? How could he be happy in the midst of the uncertainty of life, the suffering, the certain knowledge that everyone would die? The bad days would come for sure. So the monk held up his beautiful glass on his desk. You see this glass? It was given to me by a special friend. I love this glass, but I know that one day the wind may blow it over, knock it off my desk, or someone might come along and knock it off the desk. I know that the glass is already broken. So I choose to enjoy it immensely. Let us remember the nature of life is change. Even though most of us prefer certainty over uncertainty, the known over the unknown. Living with uncertainty is a path that we can learn to navigate with spiritual skill and even joy. During this time of national health uncertainty, civil unrest, anger, sadness, and grief, let us remember the glass. That glass is already broken. Choose solidarity with life. With grateful hearts, we can choose to embrace life with all its uncertainty, tragedy, heartache, and human frailty. Amen.